whose identity provider you're using as long as your users aren't typing passwords. So a lot of what we're focused on is what she's talked about, answering these best practice questions. If you ever want to keep an eye on what our team is doing, if you just ever do a Google search or Windows Live search for the terms OAuth space Goog, like our stock symbol, hopefully at the top you'll see this page, Google's Internet Identity Research, where we post most of what we're doing. And actually, if you scroll down, the presentation I'm about to give is online there as well, if you want to show it to anybody. And sorry, I work at Google, so you have to, I apologize, I have to use our Google Presentations interface, which isn't the best. So,
can I tweet that?
Yeah, feel free. So one of the things that I find most Google employees don't realize is that half the people log into Google services are not Gmail users. We have this email program. It's really great. It's really popular. Hundreds of millions of users. That's fine. But at the end of the day, I've got hundreds of millions of Yahoo Mail users, AOL Mail users, Hotmail users, Mail.ru users logging into services like YouTube, Picasa, Blogger, etc. And so if you come to one of these Google services like Google's YouTube, and you've never used Google before, but you're a Yahoo user, well, you see an interface that's the same as signing up on Safeway or Kodak or Netflix or anyone else. And I can take some, of the complaints for this, because I designed it about 6 years ago and it hasn't changed yet. Where you come to our homepage and the traditional login box, email address, password, and down here, and the standard create account button, and if I click that, get the really long, nasty form with lots of fields to fill in, password twice, email twice, CAPTCHA, legal stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then after I finally submitted that page, if I get everything right, I'm still told, okay, now you have to confirm your email address. Please go manually navigate to your mailbox, look for the email verification message we sent you. That's probably in your spam folder. Maybe you'll click it and come back. And if we're lucky, maybe half the people finish that process. So that's what Google looks like today. And so even Google has this very strong incentive right now to try to figure out how do we streamline this process for, like I say, for half our users, which are in the basically billion user size group. And funny enough, we have a list internally of what our goals are for the effort to do that. And I compared it to the same list that we wrote up for this OpenID retail, something what we think retailers want. The list is very comparable to our own internal one, but there are two additional items, and they start to overlap what the chiefs talked about. The first is, like I said, I've got 1 billion people who are not Gmail users and use Google. Again, hundreds of millions Yahoo, AOL, Hotmail users. I want to use OpenID not just to help get new signups. I want to make sure that OpenID is helping me with those existing users. And sort of related to that, the one thing I absolutely cannot afford, and I mean cannot afford, is to increase my customer support costs. In particular, the nightmare scenario for us is we roll out something that is great for new people trying to sign up, and I confuse the heck out of my 1 billion users who have already signed up in the past. That I would never be allowed to do at Google. So most of our research is focused on trying to solve those last two problems. As she says, the best practices in this space are not absolutely proven at this point. So one of the things that our team released back in October was we took one of the just popular open source e-commerce tools called OpenCart, and we deployed an instance of it on a public site you can play with called OpenIDSampleStore.com, where we replaced their login system with one that used OpenID, where we threw every single trick of the book against it that the community has come up with. And if you want to play around with it, we're not going to have time today. If you just go to it, there's a link at the top with a sort of FAQ that talks about some of the exact same hard problems that she's mentioned. And there are little videos of, hey, what does it mean for a user to get to this point? How did we try to help a user self-service get through this flow without calling the customer support rep, who would have a hard time helping them? And we're actually pretty happy with the results at the end. That we got a flow that we think will work, would avoid customer support costs. And it took 6 people and an engineering team 8 months. So I don't think a lot of other companies are going to do that. So the question is, how do we take those practices and put them in a form that other websites can deploy more easily? But this is definitely an end goal for us. Now, we want to make progress. We have this, like I said, the samples that we deployed. It is sort of an end goal. One of our big experiences in working through this is we realized we could greatly simplify complexities if we just focused on websites that have email-based login systems and OpenID providers who are email-based identifiers. It just simplifies things when there's this one-to-one relationship between the two of them, avoiding some of the weird chain scenarios that she's talked about. So there's actually another public website you can play with called federatedux.appspot.com. It's been out for about a year. If you look at it, it actually looks like it's a Google website. It looks like you're about to log into Google's Picasso photo sharing service. It's actually designed for that because we use it for usability studies. And it's basically a fully working prototype of what we're hoping Google's login flow will look like in the upcoming months, where OpenID is used for signups, for login, as well as it shows how our quote-unquote our existing users could upgrade OpenID. So we're basically saying, hey, this is what Google is headed towards as our next, big milestone. And what I want to talk about today is sort of, our progress towards this. One of our general beliefs at Google is, it's great that I have a lot of companies using OpenID with us, and we find a lot of value proposition for them. But I want to sort of put my money where my mouth is. Why should I ask you all to use OpenID with, say, Gmail if I'm not using OpenID with, say, Yahoo and AOL? Especially when Yahoo is letting Google users log in there and AOL is letting Google users log in there. Yeah, those of us who are, companies who are trying to provide leadership in this space actually do want to provide that leadership. So the first thing that Google launched maybe 6 months ago at this point is we went through our sign-up flow and said, man, one of the places where we're losing the largest percentage of users is the flow where we ask them to verify their email address. Not all websites require that, but a lot. And we just generally find that we're lucky if half the people who are sent through that flow ever come back. So we launched a modification initially with Yahoo where after someone filled out our big long form with their email address, their password, caption, etc., if they told us they were a Yahoo Mail user, we'd say, great, okay, we still need you to verify your email address, but now you have two choices. One option is click this button, and we're going to bounce into Yahoo to verify your email address. Or just click at this little escape link, the X button to your point, and we'll do it the old style way. And if they actually click this button, there's the word OpenID down here. No one actually reads that. But we bounce to the Yahoo's website. Yahoo gets the user's consent to insert their email address back to Google. And if the user clicks that, then actually we're done with the process and we've kept the user in the flow. So we've been running this for about 6 months now, and I just want to give you sort of an update on the progress. We've actually been very happy with the increase on the sign-up flows, but it took us a while to adjust for one little annoying factor, which is when we first deployed this, we saw this big drop-off in sign-ups, and we were like, oh my God, what did we do wrong? It took us about a month and a half to validate a theory that we had, which is what it actually caused is it made it much harder for hackers to make fake Google accounts, throwaway accounts. And so we've actually seen this sort of weird side effect that the quality of our accounts is significantly improved. We've actually then, we've started testing it with different email providers who do OpenID, like Yahoo, AOL, a few others, to see what the variance was across them. And sort of related to that same thing, we interestingly noted that AOL so far has by far the highest success rate, like incredibly high, like 85%. Yahoo's much lower. And again, all of our stats show, well, that's because people are entering Yahoo addresses that they don't actually even own, and are just trying to, fake their way through the flow. And to be honest, what we're seeing is, well, the hackers always try to use a throwaway Yahoo mail address, not an AOL mail address, because it's easier to get a throwaway Yahoo mail address. So we're actually finding, that Yahoo and Gmail and Hotmail are sort of exceptions to the rule, where you'll see some weird statistics in terms of the impact on the sign-up flow. But for the Congress, AOLs of the world, the results are actually much higher. But the overall end results, when we actually look at usage of the services, is we're seeing a very nice boost in what we call good users of the system. So that's been great, and actually we're just going to, over the next few weeks, start to more aggressively try to recruit other email providers around the world to be part of this program because it's been very helpful to us. Now, one of the things, though, is we've had this live for a while. We've been running constant usability studies on it to see, what are people's feedback. And actually, one of the interesting feedback to the question of, what do users think of this? The most common source of feedback is people who saw this page and saw this button and said, thank God, can I like kiss the feet of the people who made this possible? Like you're gonna take one of those annoying, stupid steps away from me I've never had to do. So what we've tried to figure out is how to move that sort of earlier in the process. So today, again, if you go to Google, go to Google, click the Create Account Now button, big long form where you enter your email address, and after you submit that, we say, oh, you typed your Yahoo address. We'll try to be smart about it. But you have to type your Yahoo address in a lot of other fields. So what we'll be rolling out in a few weeks on a lot of our properties is where if you hit the Create Account Now button, you're going to see what this community sometimes refers to as a NASCAR style page, where we will say, hey, oh, you're trying to get in this service. Well, are you trying to get in using a Yahoo account, an AOL account? We'll have spaces for other providers, or are you trying to create a Gmail account? And what we're seeing in just small scale statistical studies and usability results is by putting those logos, those brands, further forward in the process, we roughly double the number of people who will try to finish the process. And any of you who have ever sort of monitored your sign-up flows will see there's sort of drop-offs of users in every single flow. What we're actually seeing is by putting these visual logos earlier in the process, the number of people who just perform anything just goes up by a dramatic margin because they expect that the flow has been optimized for themselves, as long as there's a brand name here they recognize and that they're associated with. So we'll deploy this, and if users actually go here and click a, say, Yahoo button, we have a flow for that, if they click the Yahoo button, they get bounced to Yahoo's IDP. Yahoo gets the user's permission to share some information back with Google. And when they come back to Google, they still got the big long form, but I already know what their email address is. They don't have to type that. We'll eventually get rid of the CAPTCHA, and so we can make the flow a lot simpler, pull in eventually age and other information. Now, one of the things to notice is we are still on this page asking users to tell us a password that they want to use to log into the Google account. So we're not using OpenID at this point for login. We're just using it for sign up. But even just using it for sign up has ended up being hugely valuable for us. So, as a conservative standpoint, if you're a company who's like, yeah, I want to sort of dip my toes into OpenID, but I don't want to take any risks. This is an area that's very controlled. You can do very small statistical experiments with this, measure the impact, and like I say, we've done a whole bunch of variants of it, and been extremely positive results so far. And so it's something that your companies can do as just a starting point to get comfortable with this. So like I say, very good point. Now there's one thing that we have learned is that these flows will help your overall sign-up rates if and only if you're able to set it up in such a way that it will help about half your users. What I mean by that is go and look through your website's list of registered users. Find out what the most popular domain names are, like Hotmail.com, Yahoo, variants of Yahoo, Gmail, etc. And see if those users for those popular domains that are OpenID enabled or Windows Live enabled, see if they make up about 50% of your user base. If they do, this is, all of our stats say this is going to help you a lot. If it's less than 50%, as soon as it sort of drops below that 50% level, you're starting to hurt some of your users, you're starting to hurt more users than you're helping. And so there's sort of that, break-even point. Now, roughly speaking, if you're a US-focused consumer website, you're going to find like 80% of your users can use OpenID or similar technologies from Microsoft, Yahoo, AOL, Google, etc. So it shouldn't be a big concern. But if you're a little bit more enterprise-focused, you might find that the stats aren't there yet. All right, so I try to stress the fact that Google is not yet using OpenID for login. We're just using it for sign up. So let me talk about the login part. Now, how many people are geeky enough here, like ignore these two tables? Everyone other than these two tables, how many people know the terms both SAML and OpenID? Raise your hand.
What?
Both the terms SAML and OpenID. Okay, good. All right, so again, trying to avoid the geekiness trap. Google is now running email services for about 3 million different companies, mostly small, medium-sized businesses, but a bunch of large ones. Some of those large ones have said, Google, I want you to run my email system, but I run my own login system. I don't want my employees having to type their passwords all over the different place. That's annoying and it's bad security. And so Google had to say, okay, well, fine. So you want your people to go to the Gmail homepage and log in to use their mail, but you don't want them to type in a password there. Well, how are we going to get them to log in the first place? And so it's a little hacky, I will admit, but what we actually tell them to do is the employees of, like these Fortune 500 companies, we say, go to a Google Login box, type your email address, and leave the password field blank, and click sign in. And we'll look at your email address and say, oh, you're an employee of that Fortune 500 company, whose email we run, but they run their own login system, and we just redirect the user's browser over to that system. Again, the same way we do with OpenID. So we've actually been doing that for a while, and roughly have about 2 million people who log in this way. And like I say, it ain't pretty, it gets a job done. Something we're actually going to start doing today, and I appreciate if you all can help me recruit testers for it, is as of today, it's possible to log into Google using OpenID. Now there's some caveats to that. We're calling it sort of OpenID login, version 0.5, not even version 1. And we demoed this at a conference a few months ago. There's if you're really interested and you can actually see it, if you visit the short link goo.gl/t_i_big-BXN, or just go to that OAuth Goog site, I think, which is easier, and sort of the top link on the left, or search for OpenID retail site, will sort of point to this. It'll actually have instructions to tell you what you can do is if you have a Google account with a Yahoo email address, again, not a Gmail address, but a Yahoo email address, you log into it, and you can go into your account settings page and say, you know what, I want to log in using OpenID. Google, I want you to get rid of my password. Right? Now, we deployed this feature about 5 months ago, and I've been trying to recruit employees at Google whose personal email address is a Yahoo mail address to test this. How many do you think I found? I got 4. I got 4. Then I went to husbands and wives, and I got like 20. So it's actually a little bit difficult to test this feature. It actually works for not just Yahoo domains, but also AOL domains. We're going to try to sort of get awareness out to the geeky identity community at a minimum that this feature is available. Try and get some people to give us more feedback on it, bugs they find, usability issues, etc. And over the next few weeks, we're going to sort of slowly try to raise awareness about it. Again, we're not at the point where we're trying to do a huge launch about this. We're just trying to sort of move to the next stage of getting feedback about it. Because the one most painful thing about it is, let's say you go to Google and say, yes, Google, I want to use OpenID to log into my Google account with my Yahoo address. We're going to tell you, great. Then the next time you go to, say, YouTube, to log in, type your @yahoo.com email address and leave the password empty. And that's how you should sign it in. That is not a great UI, right? But that's what we're going to tell you to do now. Patrick?
What apps have you OpenID enabled?
All.
All of them? Have you had any correlation to the user's notion of their primary identifier, be it that you talk about AOL, Yahoo, Google? Is that primary identifier in the user's mind tied to where they have email?
Yeah, so in fact, we've been aggressively the last few years trying to brand the concept of a Google account for people realizing, oh, I already have a Google account, I created on, Google's Blogger service, so I can go and use it on the YouTube service. We've spent a lot of time doing that, and honestly a lot of money, and it's been a failure. Users associate themselves with an email address. They say, I use my Yahoo address with YouTube. I log into Blogger with my AOL address. That is what we find users understand. In hindsight, looking back a few years, we realized, it wasn't even particularly necessary to try to create that Google awareness brand. Like, we didn't get a lot out of it, even when we tried, and we were just fighting upstream. Right? So, like I say, that's something that's now available soon. And like I say, we are looking for testers. If you want to tweet it out, if you can find the link or find me afterwards, and I will help you find the link. That would be helpful. Like I say, and then we'll definitely, as we get feedback from this, we'll report it back to the community as we are today. But I keep on talking about, okay, well, login box, ugly, unusable. So let me talk about what we're doing there. So I pointed before to a couple sample websites, in particular this OpenIDSampleStore.com, where we've deployed what we found to be the best practices so far. There's a particular technique on those sites that we call the 2-tab login box, where by default the login box still has a traditional email address and password field, and we simply up at the top add a second tab that says connect with any account, And if people click that, then they see these quote-unquote NASCAR style buttons to log in with, Google, Yahoo, AOL, Hotmail, etc. We've actually found, both in our own experiments as well as people deploy this, that this works extremely well. Again, if you can get to this statistic I mentioned before, where the majority of your users can use OpenID or similar technologies to log into your site. Like I say, if you're a website and you look through your registration list, you're like, wow, 80% of my users come from Gmail, Yahoo Mail, AOL Mail, and Hotmail, then you're in fantastic shape. I'd say deploy this today, you're gonna love the results. Unfortunately, Google doesn't fall into that category because half of Google users are Gmail users, and I can't send them somewhere else to get authenticated. So I'm sort of stuck as being in one of the hardest use cases. And so we've been trying to figure out for a while what we can do in this case. And to be honest, it's, I think, been 2.5 years. I think we did over 110 different usability research studies, and our end result was, yeah, let's just copy Microsoft. The short version. Hopefully those of you in this community have heard Microsoft's efforts in identity selectors, card space. They've done a lot of work in Windows Home, Xbox, etc. And I'll give you just an example of what they do on Windows Live, because unless you're a Windows Live user, you probably don't know this. So if I go to Hotmail, it's a homepage, traditional sign-in, email address, password, and there's a little box underneath that says remember me, and one underneath that says remember my password. If you go and log into your Hotmail address, and then you sign out and come back to their homepage, you'll actually see a little entry for the last account you used, with your email address, your photo if it's known to you, and roughly speaking, what we call an identity selector. It remembers your past preferred identity on the site. And if you go and click it, then great, it asks for your password and you can log in. Otherwise you can choose the cancel out button. I want to use another account. That is one website that does this. Pretty much any of the websites using Xamarin, I think many of them using APIs, they have sort of similar interfaces that remembers the last account you wanted to use. And so, Google right now has been experimenting with deploying a similar type of model on our own login boxes, where after you log in, if you go back again, we remember, hey, here are the last few identities that you used. The difference being in our case that we want to list more than one. And so if you come here, some of these identities might be a Gmail identity, where if you click one, then we'll do like Windows Live, we'll ask, well, what's your password? But others of them might be a Yahoo address, where if you click it, we'll be like, wait, I can send you Yahoo. One of the particular things that we found that we needed to address is many family members share a computer, and if they do so, a lot of times they use the same email provider. So we see the case where a husband and wife are both Yahoo Mail users, they're on a computer. Well, if one of them goes to Google and clicks the Yahoo button, and goes to Yahoo and comes back, in many cases they accidentally get logged in as the other person's account. So the husband forget to log his wife out of the Yahoo Mail account. So we want to, when the user clicks it, they're sort of indicating to us, hey, yeah, I'm Brian at the computer. Try to authenticate me as Brian at Yahoo. As long as they click that ahead of time, we can sort of do that check and says, yes, Yahoo says that Brian is logging in his computer. If instead I get a response from Yahoo saying, no, Sarah is logging in his computer, then I can send them through a different visual flow to sort of work around some of those edge cases. So that's been helpful for us. There's some other more fancy features we have where this helps us as well. There's another thing that we're finding interesting, which is there's still needs to be a way for a user to say, okay, well, I don't want to use any of those identities on this computer. There's a different one I want to use. I want to add an account. This is more along the lines of what you might see on Xbox or Windows Home, where when you turn it on the login page, there's sort of pictures of a different person and an option to create another one. What we've been experimenting with is if a user clicks that, yes, I want to add another account to this device, we can still show one of these, what we call NASCAR-style pages with options for different identifiers. The thing we like here, though, is this no longer needs to be a static list. This, in general, is only seen by the person once per computer. They never see it again. So potentially we can change it. Whereas what we found is your login box itself, it's very dangerous to change what your login box looks like because people think they're being phished or something weird is going on. But this is just a one-time experience. So what we found is, hey, if the user is on a US IP address, I'll list US popular identifiers. If they're coming from Germany or South Korea or Russia, Korea, I can list a different set of identifiers. Or I can look at things like the language preferences in the browser or other hints that might enable me to figure out what are other identifiers worth promoting here. And then always just sort of have the escape hatch of, hey, if you don't see identifiers listed up there, type your email address. And when you type your email address, we'll be smart. We'll figure out, well, do you have an account with us or do you not? If you don't have one with us, is it one where I can do OpenID? In which case, great. Or the last fallback, oh, well, you typed an email address, you don't have a Google account, they're not OpenID enabled. Sorry, you got to do that really old style thing. But we're trying to get as small and small a group of people into that category as possible. So that's the main things that I wanted to go through. Again, just some highlights. Like I say, if you want to track what we're doing, that OAuth Google site is where we post sort of raw research. But that OpenIDSampleStore.com, that's one that is designed to be shown to executives where you're trying to convince them to get support and funding for a project. It has this FAQs with videos of a lot of the cases and how it's handled. So that's certainly helpful. Our next guidance is, hey, it's great that we're working on OpenID as a standard, and we're definitely standardizing more and more of the infrastructure. But I'll be the first one to admit there's still significant variance across even Yahoo, AOL, Google, etc. So you get a lot of value from some of the vendors in this room, generating data, ping. If you use Azure, Azure has a really nice OpenID reliant party service built into it. Those end up hiding a lot of the variance between the different providers. So in general, I'd say use them when you can. Now, I sometimes get asked the same thing, well, what is Google provide in this space? If you haven't used Google App Engine, we have this very raw OpenID capability that we put out. I wouldn't, to be honest, jump on the idea of using it. It's pretty low level. What's actually been interesting to us, though, is when we started out to this project of making Google an OpenID relying party, we built it on the same infrastructure we use for App Engine today. And so one of the things that we've done is we built wrappers on top of it to deal with, like, say, variance between AOL and Yahoo. And one of the things now we're going to try to do is just make those that sort of toolkit on top of it available as a service to website operators. So a lot of times we're getting website operators say, Google, great, you've done X, I just want to copy X. Fine. Give me a call, send me email. I can write you a web service now at this point that basically mimics everything we do. When I say mimic, I mean you will go through the exact same servers that Google is using to do OpenID. Any logic we change on our side will immediately help you. I'm similarly, spend as much time as I can talking with some of the vendors up here who are more specialists in this space, passing on what we're learning to them so they can incorporate it in their products. So Janray has also been incorporating a lot of these ideas into their products, some of the other vendors as well. So again, this is more advanced stuff, but again, if you want to keep on the edge of what we're finding with best practices in this space, the service we're starting to provide to you might be helpful, or talk to some of the other vendors in this room. Great, that's it. So if you have more information from me, and you don't have time to catch me today, feel free to email me, esacks@google.com. And like I say, if you just do a search for the terms OAuth space Goog, you can find a lot more research that we're doing in the space. Great. Why don't we turn over for Q&A for a few minutes? I don't know how badly we are on time, and I'll turn